Hello and welcome to Get Celebritized. I'm your host, Aurea McGarry, and I am very proud and excited to introduce you to a phenomenal young man. He is a brand new author of a new book that has just come out called Let Love In. The Pain Stops When the Truth Starts. His name is Jake Kauffman, aka Awake with Jake, and he is an author and a transformational coach for men, and he is awakening the world, helping men become more successful. And here's a quote that I'm going to tell you before I bring him up. This I found on his website, and you can too. It says, people don't have business problems. They have personal problems that show up in their business. That is so good. Let me bring him up here so we can talk to Awake with Jake, brand new author. Congratulations. Jake, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Aurea. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited for you. I saw your book. Put your book up. I really love the cover. It's Let Love In. Look at that. Hold that up there with Jake Kauffman.
There we go.
That is perfect. Now we're going to talk a bit about, your highs and lows and what you do now and what could have derailed you and maybe some of your success tips and how you keep on going. But talk to us. Let's just jump right into that book. What is Let Love In? And what do you mean when you say the pain stops when the truth comes out?
Well, backstory about the book and what it's about. It's ultimately about my story of how I was able to overcome childhood sexual abuse to become a successful independent business owner, coach, entrepreneur, and now author. And it's ultimately a blueprint for healing. Even though many people may not have experienced acute abuse or assault or anything like that, we've all been through some type of trauma. Trauma is often misunderstood. Trauma is much more about how we internalized what has happened to us as opposed to what actually happened. So the stories, the beliefs that we make up about ourselves as a result of what we've experienced growing up, that becomes core to our personality and who we become, which isn't necessarily who we are authentically, but more so an amalgamation of characteristics in response to pain or in an attempt to prevent pain from happening. And so that's what I ultimately discovered about myself in my late 20s that sent me down a path of healing, a path of personal development to uncover what were these internal blocks, these unconscious barriers that prevented me from becoming more successful, that prevented me from allowing a greater degree of love, intimacy, and connection into my life. Because the reality is we all have a threshold in terms of what we feel safe to receive, including financial abundance, opportunity, love, intimacy, and connection. And so anything that goes beyond that threshold on some inherent level feels like a threat in our system, inside of our body. And so what do? We naturally push it away. And that's what I found myself doing consistently. And the pattern always reveals the problem. And so once I was able to recognize that this is a pattern, sabotaging my success, pushing love, intimacy, and connection away, it forced me to do a little bit of self-discovery and self-inquiry around what is the unconscious motivation or beliefs that are beneath this behavior.
Jake, when you say you came to when you discovered this part, there's probably, I know for a fact, there are so many people that haven't gotten to the discovery part. They don't know why they sabotage their success. They don't know what's wrong. And do you agree this is a form of PTSD? And on the next question on that is, how does somebody know that they even have a problem with this underlining sadness, this underlining effect from something that happened in their childhood? Talk to us a little bit about that, how they can discover it like you did, tap in, and then what to do. Because some people might be listening or watching that. I want them to have that aha moment, like, oh, sure, that might be the problem. So talk to us a little about the discovery moments.
So for me, like I mentioned, in my late 20s, it was recognizing that I was playing out certain patterns in different areas of my life. At that point, I had been fired from literally every professional job I had ever had. I had found some way to sabotage every romantic relationship that I found myself in. And I noticed that fundamentally, I was holding people at arm's length. I would allow them in to a certain degree, but I wouldn't allow them to go any deeper than that. because I was scared of
Mhm.
a deep, deep level of love, intimacy, and connection. And so, in recognizing that I was playing out these patterns, and of course, having goals and being a very growth minded individual, I started to notice, like, what is going on here? Like, why do I keep finding myself in this position? Like, why do I keep playing out these patterns? I think I need to get support to determine what's behind this, or what's at the root of all of this.
Was there an age
Because
you were at that kind of you started really thinking, this could be a pattern? Like,
it
were
was
you in
right
your 20s?
around it was right around 27, 28 years old.
Okay, okay. And when you got fired from like every job you had, did you find a pattern that was it the same reason? And then you started thinking maybe I can stop that, or or were you not sure why you kept getting let go? Did that kind of come into play at all?
I wasn't sure why I was continuing to play out these patterns. I just knew that I needed to find out,
Okay.
because the life that I wanted, it was not a match for the life that I had. And in between who we are right now and who we're meant to be, there's tension, right? There's resistance. And that's the ultimate thing that's holding us back and preventing us from getting to where we truly want to go and being who we really want to be. And so that's what forced me down this road of introspection and self-reflection to determine what's behind these patterns. Obviously, I didn't have a lot of the language for it then that I do now,
Right.
but I knew that something was blocking me. I knew that something was holding me back and preventing me from reaching the success that I was capable of, or becoming the man that I aspired to be.
Well, what was your first step? You started realizing something's wrong and you weren't sure why. Now, hindsight now, I mean, or fast forward, people can get a hold of you, and I'm putting up your website right here. So if you're
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
guy and you're like, oh, this sound like me, this is good, they can now call you, awakewithjake.com. But
Yep.
when you were saying, okay, something's wrong, what was your first step? Because I love giving the viewers and the listeners steps. So, okay, you're noticing something's wrong. Things I'm not lining up. I want to be here, but I keep doing this, not sure
Yep.
why. What's the first step some people can take if they're listening in?
Well, I think that every hero needs a guide at the end of the day.
Yeah, I
What I
agree.
often what I often tell my clients is, the reason people hire me is very simple. I see what they can't, because we all have blind spots.
Oh,
We
yeah.
all have unconscious beliefs that we are unaware of, that our ego seeks to hide from us so that it can maintain the status quo, so that it can keep us trapped in what is known, what is familiar, what we're used to, right? Because that's our comfort zone. That's what feels safe. And so for me, I started meeting with a counselor, and it was through our meetings together that I acknowledged what I had experienced growing up as sexual abuse. When it happened, I didn't know what to do with the pain and the painful emotions that came up as a result of the experience, because I was 12, 13 years old.
Oh,
So, what did I do? I simply suppressed and repressed them. I just shoved them down.
sure.
I pretended as if it didn't happen, as if it didn't bother me, and I started to wear these different masks. And the word personality is derived from the Latin word persona, which literally means mask. And so I started to wear all of these different masks to portray this image of success, of having it all together and being fine, right? We hear this a lot with men
Yeah.
nowadays, that I'm fine,
Mhm.
when in reality, when you dig beneath the surface even a little bit, you find out very, very quickly that
Is
on some
anybody really
inherent
fine? I mean, really,
right,
you know?
yeah, and this is a common experience. One could argue that it's a common human experience, but of course, all of this was kind of going on unconsciously, and I was very aware that it was going on, but it was in response to this very significant traumatic event that happened, and I became determined that it would never happen again. And the story that I made up is, if I had it all together, if I was successful, if I was fine, then nobody would be able to hurt me, right?
Mm.
That I would be able to build this. I would be able to build this faculty, right? This structural faculty that could keep people out to a degree so that they couldn't hurt me.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I acknowledged that experience for what it was, then I was able to determine, oh, the unconscious motivation beneath all of this behavior, these different patterns that I find myself repeating, are in an attempt to prevent this pain from the past from happening, because I hadn't reconciled it yet. And so, of course, what did I find myself doing? I found myself recycling it into the present moment.
Hmm.
And that's what most people are doing nowadays, is they're just living out these patternings in response to pain, or in response to preventing pain from happening or reoccurring, and they're justifying it consciously.
Oh, sure. So
But
you went
but
out, did you get help, like therapy? Was that the first step?
I started meeting with a counselor
A
first,
counselor.
eventually went on to invest in therapy, went
That's
through
so
a series
smart.
of different workshops, personal development seminars. As you can
That's
imagine,
great.
I kind of fell down a rabbit hole, and that's what ultimately led me to do what I'm doing today.
So it was a good rabbit hole. It's something you needed to dive into. It was meant to be, because now I love when people take, their story and turn it around to help others, because only you, Jake, can help the exact people that need your help, that have been through exactly what you've been through, and they need your personality, your experience, your way to see their blind spots, and so that you'll attract that niche audience that needs you, that somebody else that's been through something similar isn't still you. So I'm so glad
Right.
you're taking the microphone. I'm so glad you're going on shows to talk to people, because it's really important. So
Thank
tell
you.
tell us about your ideal client. Like, if somebody's listening in, tell us what you do for men. I know it's men. Do you work with
Mhm.
young men, kids, older? Is there Talk to us about who it is you love to help the most, that you really can see the best
Sure.
results with.
So the majority of the men that I work with, unsurprisingly, are men who are very much like me. They're in their late 20s to early 40s. On some level, they've created what I would refer to as this initial success based on an initial order, meaning who they have become early on in life in order to be successful and to achieve. But on some deep inherent level, they feel as if something is missing, which
Yeah.
is a very common experience, that despite their success, on some level, they feel empty, unhappy, or unfulfilled, and they don't know why. They find themselves anxious, they find themselves stressed, but they aren't certain of why that is exactly. And what I've ultimately found time and time and time again is that these successful men who have built their success on the back of striving, efforting through strong self discipline, most often are unconsciously overcompensating in an attempt to avoid their pain, the pain from the past.
Yeah.
And so while that serves them incredibly well, because they've got something to prove, they've got something to protect, they don't know that. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with this. It's merely an observation, not necessarily a judgment. They overcompensate as an avoidance strategy to perform their way around their pain, or claim victory over a fundamental lack of self-worth that stemmed from their pain, which is exactly my story. Right? I went through this traumatic experience. It absolutely crushed my self-esteem. It crippled my self-worth. And
Yeah.
as a result, I overcompensated. So I became this three-sport athlete who excelled in academics, eventually became successful in career and in finances. But I was, like I mentioned at the beginning, sabotaging my success. And relationally, I just was not able to let love in, hence the title of the book. And so it
Right.
wasn't until I acknowledged my pain, right, which was the truth, because that's what our unconscious mind is. Our unconscious mind is where our beliefs are stored, where our identity is stored. And that's reality, despite what we say consciously. And so that's why the book is titled The Pain Stops When the Truth Starts. The minute we bring the unconscious to the conscious level, we discover and uncover the truth. And the
What's one
ego, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. No, I was going to say, what's one step, like the first step? Because I love to put your book back up. Because I want people to see this book, Let Love In,
Yep.
because it's more than people just think, oh, it's a love story. It's a love story with yourself, like to love yourself. But talk to us about a little bit about some of the steps. Can you give the viewers a
Mhm.
step or two? Because I want them to also get the book to start being introduced to you and introduced to
Yeah.
help. Because this is
Mhm.
it's such an important topic. Where mental health is such an important topic. And, I've escaped domestic violence, and I know that
Mm.
PTSD from any form of abuse and in
Yep.
any way, it's like every minute somebody's being abused in some way, shape, or form. 3 women a day die at the hands of abuse. So it's just, I mean,
Mhm.
imagine the young boys, and it's just an epidemic we need to stop. So give us some
Right.
tips on what they can do to start the healing process, start to let love in, and what kind of results they could see.
Well, you hit the nail on the head earlier. You said it perfectly, which is this process of discovery, of awareness. Carl Jung once said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct our lives and we will call it fate. And so it starts with
Mm.
awareness. So when clients come to me, of course, they're coming to me to become more successful in different areas of their life, whether it's related to business and career, whether it's related to relationships, love and intimacy, whether it's related to their health, because our beliefs are the foundation of all of our external behaviors. So, in order for that to happen, in order for us to ascend and improve in those different areas of our lives, we have to first have a conversation about what's stopping you from making these improvements, what's
Mm.
holding you back from getting to where you want to go. That's why the most fundamental question in men's work, the first question is, what have you been doing with your pain? So we
Oh,
have to start the conversation with what is holding you back, what is ultimately stopping you from getting to where you want to go and achieving what you want to achieve. That's the first step. The second step, of course, is to break through all of those things so that we can accomplish what we want to accomplish and live the life that we want to live.
I know you like to study. You say you love academics and your finances, but did you like Tony Robbins? He's such a self-help person, but he self-helped himself and read 600 books in a few years or a year or so.
Right.
Just crazy absorbing information. So did you find yourself doing that and getting a degree or getting some education on this? Because this is such a big topic of helping people's mental health and PTSD and trauma. So how did you prepare yourself to help others? And then, of course, writing this book, I'm sure, is the next step as well.
It was, yeah. So first and foremost, it started with me doing the work on myself, as you can probably imagine, and being a student of my work or a product of the product, as they say.
People do what you do, not what you say. So there you go. It's perfect.
Absolutely. You must be the highest example of the behavior that you seek. So it started with me investing in myself first and foremost and being the source of the transformation that I'm inviting other people into. But eventually I had to hire help. I had to hire mentorship. I'm certified in executive level leadership and life
Nice.
coaching. So, yes, I did go get some type of training, but the majority of my approach to coaching and to guiding other men is ultimately by way of the mentors that I've had in my life. Truly.
Oh,
Um, I think such a misnomer when it comes to coaching or living up to our potential is that we achieve our way there as if it's somewhere out there in the future and we need to develop our way to get there, right? Or we need to achieve our way in the process of that, which isn't true. Your full potential, it already exists inside of you.
yes.
We simply need to clear out the blocks, the barriers, the limiting beliefs that have come by way of what you've experienced and how you've internalized it as a result, the stories and the beliefs that you've made up about yourself, other people, and the world that keep you trapped in limitation. We have to let go of those things, which
Mhm.
is why living up to your true potential is ultimately a return home back to who you are authentically, the true self. It's not about getting to a certain point or place off in the future or at a certain point in time. If anything, that arguably creates suffering because it creates time. And who we are right now is on some level not good enough.
Hmm.
So we're constantly reaching for an ideal. It's called ego idealization, when really nothing needs to be developed. Who we are authentically, our highest potential already exists inside of us.
It does. I'm so glad you said that too. And I'm so glad that you walk the walk. Because I always tell my clients to take advice from people who are where you want to be. So whether you need a financial, advisor, you do somebody who knows that's living that, you're not just going to somebody, that, is in debt and broke and saying, hey, can you give me some financial advice? It's somebody that's living the life. You go to get spiritual advice from pastors and rabbis and whoever it is. And by men coming to you saying, hey, you've been there, done that experience alone will be such great wisdom and such a great pathway for them, because you're walking out the walk. And none of us will ever arrive to life is a journey, so you'll always be on this journey, but we should always be in this conga line. I always say the conga line of life, hanging on to somebody that's already further along on the road than you are, and then you're always reaching back for somebody who's not where you are to bring them up with you. And that's such a great way to bring the world together and helping. So I'm so glad you took the situation that ultimately was bad and turned around to help others, so you're making it something good. With any of your clients, with no names, of course, do you have a special success story, a special moment that you really helped someone? And can you share with us something that happened, aha moment that really just touched you from the work that you do?
Absolutely. So I think it's very easy to share the highlights, if you will. However, what I will say is that the moment we become aware, we experience what is commonly referred to as a disconfirming experience, where life is no longer the same, because now we are aware of the game that we've been unconsciously playing and how it's been holding us back. I remember one of my clients came to me, very successful in business, entrepreneur in e-commerce, and was fundamentally aware that on some level there was something internally that was holding them back. And so through our work together, we were able to discover and uncover very quickly, mind you, probably within the first month of working together, that they had this core wound that ultimately prevented them from fully trusting others. So as you can probably imagine, how did this show up in business? They were constantly micromanaging their employees. They weren't delegating effectively or efficiently in a way that allowed the business to grow smoothly, right? And so it had them also hire people who served as confirmation bias to this internalized story that I can't trust other people, or that other people are going to let me down or betray my trust, right? And so once we became aware of this story, and of course where it came from, we were able to do some healing work, and we were able to separate emotion from experience, because we're never going to be able to get rid of the experience, right? It happened.
Right.
Nothing that we can do is ever going to change that.
Right.
But what we can do is we can absolutely walk them through an experience which allows them to completely reorient themselves to the experience, so that they're no longer attaching painful emotions to it. Sadness, bitterness, anger, resentment.
Processing it, yeah.
Absolutely. So that they're able to transmute and ultimately transcend these painful emotions that were previously attached to that experience, and thus held the stories in place, the limiting beliefs that they created as a result of that story, and just continue to live out into the future. And I can't make this up. In a matter of 90 days, I think their business went from making $50,000 to $60,000 a month to $1.1 to $1.3 million a month.
Oh my gosh, what a testimonial.
So absolutely exploded, because once we were able to create this awareness and then walk her through some healing in order to break through that experience, they were able to hire effectively, right? Top talent, retain that talent. They were able to outsource and delegate to the appropriate people in a way that increased their level of autonomy and psychological safety in the workplace, which just bred an environment that was where success was inevitable. And once that occurred, the business just absolutely exploded.
That's incredible that you don't even realize, when we're not in that business as you are, of identifying these pieces that that untrust shows up in the business, in that micromanaging. Yeah, because she's not trusting, and you dug it all the way back to where they needed to unpack to deal
Right.
with. So then you can go forward, and now you're not blaming everybody else for, they even have a chance to disappoint you. You're not letting your workers do what they need to do. You're not trusting.
Right.
All that unpacking, that's amazing. That
Yeah.
is so worth its weight in gold. For sure. Talk about that. I put your website back up. You did say her, and I know you work with basically men, but you do work with businesses and companies as well, which is good to know. So
I do. Yeah, I do a fair bit of consulting. So the majority of the work that I do, like you mentioned, is geared towards men and healing the pain from their past so that they can thrive in all areas of life and live up to their true potential. In the past, I did a lot of work with women and men, and eventually felt the call to transition my work fully over to serving men in this way.
do you feel, if I ask this question, who identifies and takes action faster? Do you find the men were easier? I know this is a broad generalization,
Sure.
so just play with it. Like the men, do you find the men would identify, take action, and solve the problem faster, or do the women more, once you've identified where the issue is, take action and fix it faster, or is it a tie?
So, I would definitely say that as a broader topic of conversation, women are absolutely more open to personal development and working on themselves than men. But what I will say is, in terms of who achieves results faster, it's completely dependent on the person.
Yeah.
It's completely dependent on the person. But yes, absolutely. In general, women are 100% leading the way when it comes to personal development. And this, on some level, has been occurring for years in an attempt to overcome patriarchy and gender inequality that has caused them to push for inclusion in the workplace, in education, in politics. And a huge thing that has served them in all of that has obviously been education, of course, but also personal development and working on themselves and improving who they are and how they show up as people, as bosses, as employees, in an effort to achieve their career goals, or whatever goals that they may have, whether they're personal or professional. So women are absolutely leading the way in this regard. But in terms of who achieves results faster, it ultimately comes down to the individual and if they're committed and they're coachable.
If they're ready. I always love that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So
100%.
For all those who are listening and watching, Awake with Jake, if you're feeling like this is something that you need help with, absolutely tap into and put your book up again, Jake, because it's Let Love In. I mean, nothing else. People can get this book, they can get it on your website and start the awakening process, starting to let love in. And I love self-help books. I think self-help books are so good because it can really start so much unpacking even before you make that step or that call to now have somebody actually help you. And I know this journey of life cannot be done alone. We're not created to live this life alone. There's people out there that will hurt us and people out there that will help us. And if no matter what the hurt is, you still allow those that can help you, you will heal so much faster. You will be so much better. And loneliness is a terrible thing. People die of loneliness. And if you're keeping it all in, I cannot imagine that being helpful or healthy. So Jake, thank you for having this book. So in closing, if you want to say anything to those listening in, and they're the bug on the wall today saying, ooh, you're talking my language, you're talking to me, but I'm not really sure what to do next or how to reach out. What say you? What's your closing words of wisdom for the audience?
I would say that anxiety or tension is very likely evidence that on some level you are performing or you are playing a role that is not actually you. That while it may have contributed to your initial success, it will not allow you to live up to your true potential.
Amen to that. So well said. Jake, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for bringing your book, your expertise, and your journey to help others get through it and thrive and not just survive their traumas. And thank you for what you do, especially I think you're the first speaker I've had on my show that focuses mainly on men. We get a lot of people that focus on the women, and you're focusing on the men. Good for you, because they do want help and they do need help. And it's so great when you can find out that they're reaching out to make a difference in their lives. So thank you for that. I love that.
Thank you, Aurea. Appreciate you having me.
My pleasure. Awakewithjake.com. Tap into him. Let the love in. What a phenomenal book. So thankful for you, because you just help so many people so they can earn more, so they can live more, so they can then give back more to the causes and charities that they love and help the communities that matter to them. So Jake, thank you so much for being on Get Celebritized. Until next time, y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.